So let's continue where we left off. We were talking about marketing channels. So we were discussing about these two students, Nick and Lee. Remember, they said they were studying for an upcoming exam in their Introduction to Marketing course. And they had an interesting conversation while they were studying for the upcoming exam. They were focusing on marketing channels and wholesalers, and we said that Nick made a statement. He said, in his opinion, if it weren't for wholesalers like Barry and other intermediaries in the channel of distribution, the products we buy would cost a lot less. But after contemplating that statement, then Wertheimer said, wait a minute, we learned in coach's class that channel intermediaries actually make marketing more efficient by minimizing the number of transactions necessary to sell products. So, what's the discrepancy here? What is it that that's being addressed? What is it that when he says, we learned in class that channel intermediaries actually make marketing more efficient, what are we actually talking about? He's talking about the fact that value is created by intermediaries. Remember, we said that the intermediaries in the value chain each provide a certain function. And in exchange for that function that they provide, they earn a certain amount of margin. So marketers are aware that the channel intermediaries create value. And in exchange for creating that value, in exchange for performing that function in the value chain, remember we talked specifically, I said, what, for example, is the role of the wholesaler or distributor? We said that they break case pack quantities. So in a case pack, there might be, let's say, a dozen or 2 dozen units. But if we own one store, maybe we just need to order 3 units. So if we order 3 units, if we only need to order 3 units, we're not going to be able, if we're thinking about, consumable type health and beauty type products, you can't call up Johnson & Johnson and say, oh, I have a shop. I'd like to order, 3 baby powder and 3 baby shampoo. You could only order direct if you are going to order in large quantities. The distributor breaks the case pack quantity. That's an important function. So they said, it's okay, because we'll send you 3, and we'll send Hersfeld 3, and we'll send Alexei 3, and then Brick will send 6.
Whoa.
Yeah, well.
And so they provide, that's an important function that they provide, so they add that value, and of course they're entitled to a certain amount of margin. Max! Max, thanks for showing up today.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for...
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for the shout out. Good. All right. So here we go. Next question says, in terms of distribution, when marketing channel members are engaged in buying, selling, and risk-taking, they are performing what? What is the type of function?
It's transactional, so it's transactional. E.
Right, so the best answer is E, transactional. So by definition, the transactional function, what is transactional functions? When we talk about that, that's exactly what it is. It's the buying, selling, and risk-taking. Because what's happening? They're stocking inventory. They're holding inventory with the expectation of sales. So they expect that they're going to get customers that are going to purchase the product. And so based on that expectation, they're going to be carrying the merchandise. And what's significant about them carrying the merchandise? Why is that always a concern when we talk about holding inventory? What's the issue as a business person?
They don't want it to, in a sense, expire in value. They want to flip it.
Well, certainly you want to maximize the number of turns, and also you wouldn't want to have the merchandise depreciate. You wouldn't want it to be perishable. You wouldn't want it to become obsolete. But there's another issue, which is that we're tying up cash. So you want to have enough inventory on hand to meet demand, but there's holding costs associated with that. If you purchase merchandise, that means you need to be able to pay for the inventory.
Storage.
And also in some cases there's storage costs associated with the merchandise. The next question says, we're talking about different types of utility. What are some of the different types of utility?
Form, place, time.
Absolutely. So this question says, enhancing a product or service to make it more appealing to buyers is a function of form utility. That's talked about on page 382. What is that? What do you mean you would change the product or service? You're going to modify it to make it more appealing? Why? How is that done? And tell us more about why that makes sense to do that. Yeah, Lexi?
Because that's like a main channel in a person's mind, the visible. What you see is what makes like your choice at the end of the day very often. So like the way it looks is a very good trigger to make people to be more appealed to it. So that's why it's so important. And especially things like food where we base a lot on like what it looks like, that for example could be perfect.
Yeah, so the way that the product looks, or even the packaging, the shape, the color, the form, absolutely is going to be something that the customer is going to process and then ultimately base their purchase decision. And we said that in order for a company to be successful, if we're going to be successful as marketers, we need to be willing to change the form of our product as necessary so that we could meet the needs of our target market very well. And so we need to realize there's different segments in the marketplace. They have different requirements. And so we're going to modify the product to, that might be too dark. We have to change the form of the product so that it's relevant to the target market, and so that it's a product that they're going to adopt. So we said one size does not fit all. So we need to customize the product. We need to tailor the product. The next question talks about the snack vending machine. Located, Prince, you ready? A snack vending machine located in a university building. Located in a university building that you use between classes to buy ice cream cones when you're hungry is right. A. It's time and place utility. That's on page 382.
Right here, right now.
Which of the following services or products must be provided by traditional marketing channels. What do you think is the best answer?
So, it's healthcare.
Healthcare.
Yes, healthcare. So why is that? Well, the other items, what about the other items? There's really no way around it. When you talk about receiving health care, you need to go to the doctor's office, right? Is there any other education? You could even, do online, right? Music, you download music, software, all those things. Except for
Car rental's iffy, but I guess you could say there's like more modern ways now. Right.
You don't need
Well, what would be the alternative?
Physical things. It's
Right.
just a service.
Right.
That's what we're talking
Yeah,
It's something, it's an inherent need. You can't get out of it.
yeah. All the others you could do on the internet. You can make your car reservations on the internet, download software, music, take courses online. But healthcare, there's no substitute for visiting the doctor's office.
about. Wait, so who's paying car rental? Where's the substitute for going to get rent a car?
No, it says the car rental reservations. You just do that online. So all of these things you could do online. Make your car rental reservations, buy software, buy music, take courses online. But healthcare, you just either you go to see the doctor or you don't. So that's why we say that out of those 5, healthcare is the one that
WebMD?
must be provided by traditional marketing channels.
What about WebMD?
Could they write a prescription for you?
Well, you could
No, they just
sue.
tell you.
They can.
Yeah.
They're just
Tell
a
you
source of
about the
Tell you
information.
that you're gonna die. But one thing's there's something wrong with them when they go on that site.
Yeah, the next question is interesting about pharmaceutical companies. It says that pharmaceutical companies sell to hospitals and clinics directly. They market their products to large retail chains that distribute the medicines to their stores across the nation. They also sell to drug wholesalers that sell to the remaining independent drugstores in the United States. What method of distribution best describes that used by the pharmaceutical companies in this example? Who said dual? Alexa, yeah, dual, because they're using both direct and indirect. So in this scenario, we're given here, it talks about direct channels and indirect channels, because direct to the hospitals and the clinics, and then indirect to the other intermediaries. So of course they want to sell their product, Zanga!
Whoa.
They want to sell their products to their pharmaceutical products to the drugstores, but they realize that they need to have a dual distribution strategy, which is exactly what we were just talking about. Isn't that what we were talking about? Is how are we going to successfully distribute our product? In this case, they need to use multiple channels of distribution. Remember also we talked about Kenneth Cole. We said that they sell direct to consumers, and they also sell through third-party retailers. So they have their own company-owned stores. You have their Kenneth Cole stores. They sell direct to consumer, and they also sell through retailers such as Macy's, for example. Questions about that? Are we good?
Great.
Great.
Great. Good. All right. The next question talks about wholly owned extensions of the product that perform wholesaling activities as referred to as, what's the best answer? So the best answer is D, which is,
Actually branches and sell.
yeah, the branch office, the sales office of the organization.
Hey.
which is D. The best answer is D. Manufacturers, branches, and sales offices on page 389. And so importantly, it says here that it's a wholly owned extension. It's a part of the company. The wholesaler is not a part of the company. You sell your products to a wholesaler. You sell your products to a distributor. They're not part of your company. They buy the product from you. They sell it to their reseller. They sell it to in this other example, they sell it to local drugstores. But they're not a part of our company. They're an intermediary. In this case, the company also has sales offices and branches that they own. They have their own sales office. They have their own people that are working hard to generate sales for the organization. Then last class, remember we talked about the difference between intensive distribution, selective distribution, and exclusive distribution. And remember we talked about Apple, and we said that they have an exclusive, when they first introduced the iPhone, they had an exclusive agreement, an exclusive distribution agreement with AT&T. We talked about why that made sense. And so this question asks us about the type of distribution and market coverage associated with, remember we talked about before, shopping goods. We said there's a distinction between shopping goods, convenience goods, unsought goods, specialty. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
A little bit? Just say yes. It doesn't. Yeah.
Of course.
Right, so this says that with shopping goods, what type of coverage, what type of distribution strategy would make sense? What's usually associated with shopping goods? What do you think? Is it going to be intensive, extensive, selective, exclusive, concentrated?
Selective.
Selective. Selective is the best answer. So for shopping goods, yeah, you're not going to be everywhere. You're not going to be in every channel. You're not going to be in discounters, department stores, grocery stores, drug stores, specialty stores. For shopping goods, you're going to be in a good number of locations, but not everywhere. Why? Who could explain why that is? Why for a shopping good does that make sense? Go ahead, Jonathan.
You think shopping good is like fruits and vegetables? Could that be?
Could be. It's your example, but I mean.
if it's fruits and vegetables, you're not going to find that in a department store that sells clothes.
Right. So there could be a disconnect there. Absolutely. So it's last class we said that it needs to be relevant to that channel of distribution. So. Yeah, you wouldn't, it doesn't mean that you can't get an apple at a department store, but that's not the primary focus of that channel.
I guess if it was everywhere, it would more likely be a convenience good than a shopping good.
Yeah, so for a shopping good, it means that the customer is gonna go maybe from store to store, maybe do some a bit of research, and so it doesn't need to be, and you wouldn't expect it to be everywhere. They know that this product they could only buy online, or they could only buy on TV, or they could only buy in department stores. Or maybe we gave them an exclusive, like we said. Maybe we gave certain retailers an exclusive, or a channel an exclusive on the product. So for this, in this situation, that would make the most sense. And what Ari is suggesting is that, well, if it was a convenience good, then you would think, well, yeah, that would maybe, you would have intensive distribution depending on the actual product. Like Jonathan is saying, well, yeah, maybe if it was fruits, then every channel wouldn't lend itself to that. But there's other items that we could come up with that would make sense, that we would have intensive distribution. Questions about that? So who could remind us the difference, just as a refresher, because we talked about the difference between convenience products and shopping and specialty and unsort. Do you remember that? We had a conversation about, that was the same day that we also talked about different types of products. And we said that there are goods and services. And goods can either be consumable or durable. And then we had a discussion about specialty products and convenience products and shopping and unsort. So let's just take a couple minutes and recap.
You said convenience is more like in the drugstore. If, there's like many different types of items that are there, no?
If you see it, then you'll buy it, but you're not going to go out and look for it.
So what we talk about is definitely a distinction between a convenience good and shopping. Shopping suggests that we're going to make the effort. It's not an impulse purchase, but it's something that we're going to look for. That we're going to drive 10 miles and go to a particular store to find. And we might also need to do research as well. Or maybe we just want to do research. We want to get input from our friends, from our family. We go online, we read consumer reports. But we need to understand that as marketers, is our product a shopping good? Are people going to expect us to have a substantial amount of information about the product, let's say on our website? Is it a high involvement purchase? Whereas a convenience product suggests that more than likely it's low involvement, and of course depending on the individual. So what I consider to be a low involvement purchase, Joseph might consider to be high involvement. But it's accessible, more than likely it has intensive distribution, so the market coverage is intensive. And what about specialty and unsort? So you see, it's important for us to make these classifications about our goods, because that's going to help define our marketing strategy and tactics. So what about specialty? What would be an example of specialty?
So wait on a line for hours to buy it, something you would go ahead and really try to find to buy it.
You're definitely going to make a lot of effort. Could be something like antiques, for example. So that's definitely not intensive distribution.
Also like a ride, like Universal Studios or something. Isn't that? If you're waiting in line for a ride for a long time.
And, yep, I'm listening. Go ahead.
You're waiting in line for a long time for a specific ride, so.
But we're classifying the theme park as a specialty? As a specialty type good or service?
Yeah, no?
What do you think?
Do you think? Somewhat? Come on.
Doesn't sound like it.
Something.
Theme park doesn't sound like a specialty.
What
Can
is
you
it?
repeat the question?
Oh.
The question was, can you repeat the question?
Theme park's not really
Good
special.
answer, good answer.
So I think a good example for you to remember a specialty good is is an antique. If you're an antique collector, antiques are an example of a specialty good because you don't have intensive distribution, and it's something that the shopper is going to spend a lot of time locating the product. That shifts the burden in a big way for us as marketers.
What about
You see how that's different from a convenience product, or well, certainly in contrast to convenience. And then at the next extreme, at the other extreme, would be unsort, which is a complete, right? That's like at two extremes, if you will. Unsort products, that means the customer isn't even looking for the product. And the other side is that specialty products, that they are actively and aggressively researching and looking for a particular product. So they're taking the initiative to find antiques. What about if they're not? If they're not taking the initiative? What would be an example of an unsort good?
Something that people don't know about.
Right, something they may not even be on their radar screen. And so that means that we need to build awareness.
Is that what advertising?
So we need to advertise and make them aware that we provide a certain product or service. Because presumably we've identified the unmet need, now we need to make them aware. Good job. You guys rock!
Yeah.
No, you're up.
The next question is about vertical conflict.
B?
Whoa.
The best answer is B, conflict that occurs between two different levels in a marketing channel. That's on page 397. Remember last time we talked about vertical integration and horizontal integration? What's the difference? What's horizontal integration? If a company integrates horizontally, what does that mean?
Someone within their same product. Someone within their market.
So who could give us an example? What does that mean if a company horizontally integrates? What about, let's say it's a specialty store and they sell footwear. Let's say it's Foot Locker, and they decide to horizontally integrate. What is that? What would be evidence that they've horizontally integrated? What would they do next? And then after that, what would they do that would provide us with evidence that, yes, Coach, this is an example of horizontal integration? What would need to happen if Foot Locker were to integrate horizontally? La 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 la. Sing a happy song. La 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 la. Smurf the whole day long. So, what do you think?
Then do something with the Smurfs.
Yeah.
Just purchase something that helps their business in terms of like manufacturing the shoes or something like that. Prince knows the answer.
Oh,
Yikes.
He's eyeing me on this one.
Okay, this is weird.
That's all. You got the eyes.
I knew the answer. I didn't beat up.
Oh, you were thinking that I would be.
So, for example, if our core business is retail and we horizontally integrate, if we sell footwear, sneakers and shoes, and we horizontally integrate, that means that the next thing that you would expect to see is that we would then open up a specialty store that sells electronics. And then after that, we would open up a specialty store that sells vitamins. So we're still retailing, we're still operating as a retail organization, but at that level in the value chain, but we have different types of stores that we're
Do
operating.
they always have to be, does it have to be a different store, or could it be part of the same store?
Well, if they're just opening up more of the same, then the question is, have they horizontally integrated, or are they just growing their business? So if they had one store and now they have 10 stores, that's okay, but that horizontal integration. So that's not horizontal integration.
No, it's horizontal integration. I'm saying like they have 100 stores, and then in each store they add on a section for vitamins inside their running store, like inside their shoe store.
Well, then you would say that they're not a specialty store. Maybe they're a general merchandiser, and so they just added a department or a section. So isn't that basically what you're saying? Is that's really how department stores evolved?
Yeah.
And they just kept adding another department. Well, you know it. You have 50 departments, so then you're a department store. But we said, what's the difference between a specialty store and a department store in terms of the format, the retail format, if you will? What's unique if we were to compare a department store and a specialty store?
Specialty only focuses on one thing, and they only sell that type of product. The department sells many different products.
Yes, good. And what else? Closely related to that is if they only sell one thing, then
They have more of it, more different type, more variety of that product.
absolutely. So if you just sell sneakers, if you're a specialty store and you sell sneakers, then you would expect that they might have 100 or more different types of sneakers there. Different colors, different brands. But if you're a department store, the value proposition of a department store is not that you're going to have this vast variety that Jonathan was talking about. Yes, we have sneakers. Yes, we have sneakers. If you want, you could buy sneakers here. If you want to buy coats, you could buy coats here. You want to buy shoes, you could buy shoes. You want to buy shirts, you could buy shirts. Watches, we have that too. But that's different from saying we have 1,000 different watches. We're a watch store. See, so what Ari is suggesting is correct, is that if it's a specialty store, you have a limited number of items, maybe just one item even, like you just sell sneakers, that's an item, and then you're going to have a very vast assortment. So you're going to have lots of different types of sneakers, different colors, and running sneakers, and walking sneakers, and sneakers for basketball, and for golf, and so on. And you're going to have this vast variety. But you wouldn't expect that in department stores. The department store channel has something of a lot of different categories. And a lot of people like that because it's convenient. So you go to one store, and then you could get sneakers, but at the same time, while you're there, you could get pants, you could get sweaters, you could get other merchandise.
Yeah, but like the largest department stores in the U.S., don't they try to also have a lot of each product? So if they have like shirts, they have pants, they have watches, they're going to have a large variety of each of those inside their department store.
So they're going to have absolutely complementary products. So shirts and pants and socks and shoes, products that are used together. But in terms of the breadth of the assortment, while they're going to have a variety of pants, just think about how much variety really they could have based on the amount of space that they're going to allocate for that particular department. Like, for example, of course, I'm not just saying that they only have like one pair of pants there. Like, you could only get blue pants. No, of course you could get pants that are blue, brown, green, some with stripes, some solid, but that's different from a store that focuses just on selling pants. So if that's your whole space is allocated to pants, then you're going to be able to have a lot more variety. Or places like, for example, like there's a place called Tie City. Well, if you who has a good assortment of ties? Macy's actually has a pretty good assortment of ties.
Century 21.
Bloomingdale's has a good assortment of ties. Saks has a very extensive assortment of ties. Extensive. Very extensive. And the question is, how do those compare with, like, Tie City? Place that just has ties. Now, so based on what I said, I'm not saying that Macy's only carries like one tie, one color, one size, one designer. No, they do. They have variety, but not as much as if that's your business. Then you're going to have maybe, instead of 10 different brands, you might have 50 different brands. And you're going to have a lot more patterns and colors as part of the assortment. Questions? All right, so let's look at the next question. The next question says, a firm can become a channel captain because it is typically the channel member with the ability to influence the behavior of other members. Influence can take 4 forms: economic, identification with a particular channel member, the legitimate right of one channel member to direct the behavior of other members, and expertise. So expertise is the 4th element. That's on page 398. When we think about marketing, we said that one of the 4 P's is promotion. An example of a promotion could be a sweepstake or a contest. What's the difference? What's the difference between a sweepstake and a contest? Because we hear about those quite a bit. Sweepstakes and contests are types of promotions. But why do we use 2 different terms? There's something that's unique about sweepstakes versus contests. Why do we need to make a distinction? If a company has a contest, what does that suggest? So the participant, there's an expectation of the participant. In a contest, there's an expectation that the participant will demonstrate some skill. So they need to write a jingle for our advertising campaign, or they need to draw a new logo for our company. Whereas a sweepstake, you just enter your name and it's just random. There's no skill involved. You would put your name in the box, and as luck will have it, either they call your name or they don't. But a contest, the participant has got to do something. They have to do something that's going to justify them being awarded the prize. So why do they get the trip to, all expenses paid trip to Israel? Or why do they get $10,000? Or why do they get a lifetime supply of orange juice? Why? Because they demonstrated that they have some skill. They won the contest. Not that their name was drawn from a hat, but that what they did was better than what others were able to do. Now, what's important about when we talk about promotions and when we talk about advertising, and we have different mediums in which we can advertise. We could utilize broadcast. Broadcast, when we talk about broadcast as a medium, we're talking about TV and radio, for example. We talk about print. Print is another medium, so we have broadcast and print. It could be in newspapers, it could be in magazines. And the different mediums, they have advantages and disadvantages. Outdoor is another medium. So it could be on billboards, bus shelters, could be on the side of buses, or inside of a bus, or a train station. Those are examples of outdoor. It could be on the internet. But what's important when we talk about promotions and when we talk about advertising is what's referred to as IMC. So in chapter 18 we talk about IMC, which is integrated marketing communications, which means that if we have promotions, if we advertise on billboards and on the sides of buses and in magazines and newspapers and on TV and on radio, that it's all got to be integrated. So we need to have a marketing communications plan that's going to ensure that all of those different aspects are working together, that they're reinforcing each other. So whatever the messaging is in the TV commercials and whatever the brand image that is being communicated in the TV commercials, that needs to be also supported in the print ads on the internet. It's got to have the same look, feel, identity, personality. There's got to be consistency. So what we do is we develop a map, and we look at what's called touch point mapping. Touch point mapping is our attempt to make sure that all the points of contact that the customer has with our organization, whether it's in the store or on our website or on the phone or ads that they see of ours in magazines or TV commercials, that all of that is consistent. So what we do is we map that out and see all the points that the customer has contact with the organization. In some cases, maybe we don't have a store. Our business, we don't have a shop. We don't have any company-owned stores. But if we did, we would need to think about, are we going to use greeters? What are the greeters going to say to our customers when they come into store? And how is that going to support who we said we are as a company, as a brand? Is our brand something that's fun, contemporary, or is it professional? Is it provocative? All of our marketing communications have got to achieve this synergistic effect. Because remember, it's likely that we're going to have to use multiple mediums in order to maximize the processing of our message, the ability of the receiver to decode our messaging. In advertising, we talk about messaging. So we have a certain message. And remember, we talked about reach and frequency. So we need to be able to reach, we need to be able to expose the target audience to our marketing communications. But importantly, they need to be exposed to the marketing communications enough times. The frequency has got to be great enough so that they get it. So that they're able to decode the message and that they're going to remember the features the benefits and the brand name. Because we said there's a lot of clutter. What does that mean, clutter? That means you're watching TV, you're watching a program, and they're talking about Rashi. They're talking about Rashi and his commentary, and so
TV in Israel.
what happens is they go to a commercial break, and we see a commercial. The commercial is 15 seconds. Right after that is another commercial, also 15 seconds. And then another commercial, and then another commercial, and then another commercial, and another commercial. Is that an exaggeration, or is that how programming is created? That you have a certain program, and then there's the commercial breaks, and then you have 5, 6, 7, sometimes 8 commercials during the break. That's an example of clutter. 6, 7 commercials, and then somebody says to you, "All right, Alexi, what was the first commercial about?" And then you say, "Oh, I know, it's a trick question. It was about orange juice. I know that. I know it was about orange juice. I was born at night, but I wasn't born last night. It's got to be about orange juice." And then I say, "Okay, all right." And what was the brand of orange juice? And he starts to look at Jacob, and he looks over to Joseph, and he's like, "Well, I know it was about orange juice, but then after that I saw all these other commercials. How am I going to remember?" And I said, "Okay, well, if you can't remember the brand name, tell me, what was the value proposition? What was the promise? What was the brand promise? Even if you can't remember the brand name, what was the promise? What did they say?" So that tells us that there needs to be frequency. There needs to be a high enough level of frequency so that after seeing it 5 times or 8 times, and very often those are realistic, the realistic number of exposures, then he'll be able to say, "Okay, yes, it was about orange juice, and it was the Tropicana, and they said that if you drink orange juice, that you'll be able to be healthy because orange juice has a high level of not only vitamin C, but also vitamin A and vitamin D and calcium, and you know what? If you drink this, you could stop drinking milk." You say, "Wow, this guy, he's got it. He's got it." So part of the decoding occurred because Alexei saw the television commercial, he saw the billboard, he saw the ad in a magazine, maybe heard something on the radio. And so we realized that the idea of our target audience being reachable is challenging. It sounds easy to say, "Oh, well, the target audience has got to be reachable." That would be lovely, but how are we going to be able to reach the target audience? And so what we know is very often it can't be through one magazine. In fact, I had suggested that very often we're looking at advertising in 10 or 12 magazines for a given campaign, because it's unlikely that the readership of the magazine is going to be perfectly in line with the demographics of our target audience. So we know when you could go online and go to the website of any number of publications, download their media kit, and they give you information about their readers, the age group of the people that read their magazine, and other demographic information. So that's going to help us determine which magazines we're going to advertise. Because ideally, we want to have as much of a match with the demographics of our target audience as possible with the demographics of the magazine. But very often that's not the case. Sometimes only 50% of the people who read that magazine are our target audience. And so there's a certain amount of waste. And then you might say, well, I'm going to only select the magazines that are 95%. That 95% of the readership is my target audience. Usually it doesn't happen that way. So we know that there's a certain amount of waste, and that's why media buyers and media specialists spend so much time, literally, I mean, people in media who are just responsible for doing media selection work 90 hours a week. Did we talk about cost per thousand? Cost per thousand. In order for us to compare the cost of different media, we talk about cost per thousand, CPM. The Roman numeral M is what? 1,000. That's why we call it CPM. So now you could concentrate, right? So when you're looking at a variety of different magazines, for example, to advertise, we need to decide which is the most cost-effective. But it's not as obvious as you might think, especially when you have to look at so many different magazines, so many different ones. If we talk about one example, you say, well, what do you need a spreadsheet? What do you need a computer to figure this out? When you have to do a few dozen of these calculations, it becomes somewhat problematic. So I'll give you an example. So we have two choices. We could advertise in magazine A or magazine B. Magazine A is $200,000 for a full-page color ad. Magazine B is $400,000 for a full-page color ad in the United States. Which is the better deal? Let me see who's smart here. Let me tell you again. Magazine A is $200,000, not shekels, dollars. All right? Magazine B is $400,000. So magazine A is $200,000, magazine B is $400,000. Which number is greater, $200,000 or $400,000? What do you think? Good. So what do you think is the publication in which we should advertise?
It's not enough information. You have to know how many people read each magazine.
Yeah, so we don't really know. Yes, 400,000 is more than 200,000. You should pat yourself on the back. If you figured that out, then you should give yourself a round of applause for that. But like Ari is saying, well, we don't really know which is the better deal, which is the least expensive option, because we don't know the level of circulation for the publication. So if I told you that in Better Homes and Gardens, for example, that a full-page color ad was $400,000, which is actually is a real number. So a full-page color ad in Better Homes and Gardens is $400,000 for one insertion. The readership is approximately 8 million. Now, in print, that's actually a lot. I know we're so accustomed to people throwing around numbers for television advertising, especially in the Super Bowl, people talking about 100 million viewers and 200 million viewers. In print, 8 million. If you have a magazine that has a circulation of 8 million, that's substantial. You don't see numbers like for magazines that have circulation of like 100 million. 8 million is a lot, and very few magazines have a circulation of more than 20 million in the United States.
New York Times.
We'll come back to newspapers in a second. And we also, with newspapers, we need to identify which are national newspapers and which are local. But we're gonna come back to that. Oh, Wertheimer, he's leaving. Maybe it's good. You could. So, the circulation for Better Homes and Gardens in the United States is about 8 million. And so, for $400,000, you have the opportunity to expose 8 million readers to your ad. Now you might say, 400,000? How come I'm always reading in Ad Week and Advertising Age that companies introduce a new product and they're kicking off the launch, they're spending $50 million in advertising? Say, Coach, you must have got the numbers wrong. How do you get 400,000? I thought advertising you spend millions. One ad in one magazine, one time. So if you were going to have a full-page ad in Better Homes and Gardens every month, then that's $5 million right there, and that's just one magazine. And remember I told you that very often we advertise in 8 to 12 magazines as part of a campaign. So not everybody runs a full-page ad. So some people run half-page ad, some people run a quarter page. Now, in our scenario, what do you think about the situation where for $200,000 you could reach 4 million people? What do you think? Let's figure it out. So we're going to calculate the cost per thousand for A
Same thing.
and B. We have, what do we have? We have the cost of the ad times 1,000 divided by the circulation. So for A we said it's what? 400,000? Times 1,000 divided by 8 million. And here we said the cost is what? 200,000 times 1,000 divided by how many?
4 million.
All right. So
That's just half.
what's the cost per thousand? What's the cost per thousand here?
Less.
5. Isn't the first one 5? Times 1,000.
Is this still Smurfs?
Divided by
That is?
8.
Sing a happy song.
That's the answer.
Right,
La 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 la. Smurf the whole day long.
right.
How much?
50?
Yes, $50 to reach 1,000 people.
Please, guys, up here on that. Then, oh, wait. 50.
You sure?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, if it's less, it's half
Exactly
of that,
half.
half, it's 50. Yeah, it's same thing.
So the cost per thousand for ad B is also $50. Now in the United States, That's a realistic number. So I wanted to give you real numbers. So the cost per thousand varies depending on the publication. And that's why we need to do this, because it could be 50, it could be 35, depending on, it could be for, let's say for billboards, it's much less expensive. So the cost might be, for example, $18. The CPM might be $18. So from like $18 to even like $125 is realistic in terms of cost per thousand to advertise in the United States. So if you do this calculation on an exam and you get 2,347 and 18 cents, something's not right there. Well, if you see that as a choice on the exam, then you're like, well, that can't definitely be that. Why? Because coach said that the range of course per thousand could be, approximately from like, let's say $20 to about $120. Those are real numbers. It could be a little bit more, could be a little bit less, but it's not 2,138, and it's not 5,247,116. So good perspective for you. Now, what about if we change these numbers? What about if the circulation was 3 million?
What if it was 8?
What if it was 3 million? So in this case, what we saw is the cost per thousand is the same. So what would we do? So what if the cost per thousand, all right, so how does this help us with our decision-making process? So in this case, we found out that the cost per thousand is the same. And then you might say, oh, so what did we do? The cost per thousand is the same, so it doesn't matter. Wait a minute. What do you mean it doesn't matter? What did we find out? So what is our decision going to be? So if the cost per thousand is the same, what are you going to do? Does it matter or not? What did we find out here? If the cost to reach 1,000 people is the same, then which choice is better?
Doesn't it just depend how much money you're going to spend?
Which is the better deal?
Depends
We
on-
said that the reason for calculating the cost per thousand is so that we can compare apples to apples. Because Ari said, well, wait a minute, coach, you're tricky. You didn't tell us what the circulation is. All right, so now you know the circulation. Now what?
So don't you want to go with A because it's the largest circulation? The same
Is
price?
that your final answer?
I guess, yeah.
And what do you think?
A way to determine how many of the 1,000 are our target market.
Yes, that's a separate calculation. We need to determine the amount of coverage, how much waste there is, but let's just work with what we have here for now. So what do you guys think?
I still
The
say
cost per thousand is $50 for both. And which should we choose?
I would say
I'll go with B then.
A. Just because I said A?
Yes.
Depends.
Exactly
Right.
Will be.
What do you guys think?
B, spend less money.
Depends. Yeah, but
Even though
That's
you're
what I
not
said.
getting to as many people.
I said it depends. It
Spend less
depends.
money.
It depends how much you want to spend and how many people you want to reach.
What's the survey say?
You always want to reach as many people.
It doesn't matter.
Spend as little as possible.
I say B.
I got you.
B.
Smurf the whole day long.
Survey says.
What? You're not voting? What about Johan? You want to vote?
A.
Okay, never mind. Go back to whatever you're doing. This says that $50 per thousand. This tells us that for $400,000 we could reach 8 million people, or for $200,000 we could reach 4 million people.
It's the same.
So whatever you prefer.
Just
Right.
depends on
Like Ezra was saying, if we knew, then it would be, well, what about the readership? then maybe here we reach more of our target audience. But the cost per thousand is the same. So even though, so this is misleading. That's one of the things I want to show you is, that's 200,000, this is 400,000. You might say, no, this is a better deal. It's cheaper. But this says, no, don't be tricked. This is not really cheaper. The cost is really the same. The cost per thousand. So in this case, we'll have to go with what Ezra suggested and pick the publication that is a better match with our target audience. But then, we have our friend here who's very clever.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Not you. 66.6.
Thank you so much for the compliment, Coach.
See? Yeah, it's my
So
pleasure.
it can never be point.
So this says that for $200,000, it's going to be half as much. The price is half as much, but we'll only reach 3 million people. So instead of reaching 8 million, we reach 3 million. And then the cost per thousand is $67.
Then I go with that.
Then you go with
Of
which?
course you go to A.
Hey, has a lower cost per thousand.
Thank you.
So you change the problem. That's why you're doing it.
Professor.
Right, so we looked at a different scenario. So we looked at one where the cost per thousand is the same, and one where the cost per thousand is different. So if the cost per thousand is the same, then even though the price of the ad here is less, it doesn't matter. The cost, we're still being charged the same amount per thousand. So you might be thrown off, say, well, no, it's 400,000. Yes, 400,000 is more than 200,000. I'm happy that you guys know that 400,000 is more than 200,000.
Right.
Good man. Because of the slide.
That's right, that's right. But the question is, how much is it to reach 1,000 people? Here we said in the prior example that it's the same, $50 to reach 1,000 either way. But if the circulation was only 3 million,
So
then the cost per thousand would be higher. All right, before we go, something else.
no problem.
It goes on and on, my friends. Some people started singing it, not knowing what it was, and they'll continue singing it forever, just because.
The sun goes on and
Because Coach goes on and on, my friends.
Worked all day long.
All right, so I want you to think about the strategy when we think about our advertising. We need to decide on a media strategy. We need to decide if we're going to use a
Yeah, it depends on the size.
continuous So we need to decide whether or not our strategy is going to be continuous, pulsing, or flighting. So when we're advertising and we're using a continuous strategy, that means that we're advertising all the time.
all year round.
Absolutely, all year round. For some companies, that makes sense because of the product that they sell. The product is purchased all year round, and some companies could afford to advertise all year round. But that's different from pulsing and flighting. Pulsing and flighting is different. Who's going to tell us? Go ahead. We're going to try this again?
Wow, yeah. I would say pulsing is like if you own a winter clothing company, then in the winter you're going to advertise for that. And flighting is more like not so. Flighting is like up and down, like a flight. So like you'd have.
Should not be going up and down.
If the plane is going up and down, that could be
Pulsing
a
is
problem.
like at one point of the year you're like counting like the advertisements, you're always like advertising at that point, and flighting is like in between pulsing and continuous. It's like the intermediary between the two in terms of
Leveled out.
All right, so
it's more constant than pulsing, but less than continuous.
Sure, but
Is that wrong?
all right, so continuous. We know what that is. We're advertising all the time. Then which strategy do we advertise all the time, but then sometimes we advertise more than others?
Pulse like goes up and it goes like this. So here's the constant and here's the
Right, so importantly, when we talk about pulsing as a strategy, that means we advertise all the time. It's still continuous, but there's certain times of the year when we're gonna increase the amount we're spending on advertising.
Yes.
That's pulsing. Flighting is January we advertise, February we don't advertise. March we advertise, April we don't advertise. So on, off. What's the challenge with that? What do you think that's...
people forget.
Yeah, people are going to forget. So you advertise in January, and then what's happening in February when we're not advertising?
Other people.
Right. Yep, absolutely. So have a good night. Do good things.
Orange juice! Orange juice!
Yes.